I'm Hugh Hewitt on this July the 2nd, 2025, and a big, big day it is. As we speak, the House is voting, and the vote is open on a rule that will bring the one big, beautiful bill to the floor. They need a majority to move it to the floor. Got out of committee last night by a 7-6 vote. They can lose 3 Republicans. They lost 2 last night. Tom Massey's not a Republican. They're going to lose him. He's a moron. And so they can only really lose 2 Republicans. Now, the Freedom Caucus is huddling, and the liberal Republicans are huddling, and they don't like the bill. Or I should say, they would have preferred a better bill. They like a lot about the bill. There isn't any Republican I know who is in favor of a massive tax hike on January 1, an economy-crushing tax hike. There isn't any Republican I know who isn't in favor of building the border wall, adding detention beds, increasing the pay and numbers of the Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There isn't a Republican I know who doesn't want to rebuild the depleted stocks at the Pentagon. Everybody likes most of this bill. Some members, I think a total of 12 out of the 220 Republicans, there are 220 Republicans and I believe 212 Democrats, I think that's it, and some vacancies. Of the 220 Republicans, not one of them likes everything in the bill. It's 940 pages, but it went through regular order. It passed the House, got sent to the Senate as the Constitution requires. The Senate got a hold of it. They did the best they could with the 53 senators they've got, and they barely passed it, 50-50. Vice President Vance had to break the tie. Now it's back to the House, and Speaker Johnson has wisely, in my view, teed it up for a make-or-break vote. Now, if either the Freedom Caucus or the liberal Republicans break the bill on the vain hope that they can do better next time around, they own it. They own the tax hike. They own the improvements to the border that won't happen. They own everyone who comes over the border in the interim that isn't apprehended by an expanded border control. They own whatever happens to our national security, all the delays that happen. They own it all because, classic phrase, they're going to let the perfect become the enemy of the very, very, very good, because this is a very, very, very good bill. It delivers 95% of the Trump agenda. Donald Trump did not run on the reform of entitlements, but it's possible that with a second reconciliation bill, which is indeed possible because they went with one big, beautiful bill, that the people concerned with entitlements can actually take them on. That is the big objection from some members of the Freedom Caucus, is that the Senate didn't cut enough. Some of the cuts that the Senate tried were blocked by the Senate parliamentarian under the procedure known as the bird bath, a rule that governs the reconciliation process. And we don't want to change the rules in the Senate. That's why we don't want to change the rule in the filibuster. So the House often is mad at the Senate, and the Senate is often mad at the House, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And ordinarily, if the two chambers broke down and went home angry, I wouldn't mind. But they're not going to get it back together again. This is the best they're going to do because they need 50 Republicans in the Senate and they need 217 Republicans in the House. This is the best that can be done. Now, there are some very sincere deficit hawks. I think of Mr. Roy of Texas. And Mr. Roy of Texas has been saying the same thing forever. This debt is unsustainable. Chairman Powell agreed with him yesterday. We can sustain the debt we have. We can't sustain the path we're on. We have to grow the economy. So the number one consideration for me is national defense. And we are way below where we need to be on funding national defense. But the second most important consideration is a tax code that promotes growth. We can't be a 2% GDP country. We've got to be a 4 and a 5% GDP country. That only happens when you encourage investment, when you allow for immediate 100% depreciation of investment. It only happens when you keep marginal tax rates low It only happens when you take away the tax on tips, the tax on Social Security for low Social Security income earners. It only happens when you do a bunch of things and make them permanent in the tax code. So we don't have to do this again in 10 years. We did this in 2017, and the tax cuts that Donald Trump passed in 2017 expire at the end of 2025. So we're getting an automatic jack-in-the-box, scare you to death tax cut, and it's going to hurt the market. Now, if the members of the Freedom Caucus are in there telling each other, well, they'll have to rewrite it. They'll have to do it. We dare not do this. They don't understand everything that can go wrong. They forget Jim Jeffords. All right, now they've got 53 in the Senate. So it's not a question of one senator jumping, but it is a question of one senator changing their mind on the vote 50-50. One senator changed their mind. They don't get it out of the Senate. And the House, one member of the House changes their mind. They don't get it out of the House. So it's a compromise of a compromise. So nobody loves it, and everybody should like it. And everyone should vote for it. And it shouldn't be drama. All right? We don't need drama. There are some members who are frauds, like Tom Massey of Kentucky. He's a fraud. He's not really there to be a congressman. He's not really there to be a Republican. He's not really there to do anything except do interviews and take a paycheck and go home and pretend, I don't know, talk to high school civics class about it's only a bill and play the cartoon. He can give tours. I don't know what he does, but he's a fraud. There are other serious deficit hawks, and there are other serious moderate Republicans who have deep-seated concerns about cutting too deep or not cutting too much or not cutting enough. And I believe them. I've had Chip Roy on this program. We text, we talk. I agree with him. We have to be serious about entitlement. I want a BRAC commission on entitlement. Wrote up for Fox News tomorrow, where if the president gives to the Freedom Caucus, okay, guys, you get the second reconciliation bill. You write it, you manage it, you do the best you can. I'll support you. Not a guarantee we'll get it through. But there are a bunch of entitlement reforms you could do if you spread them out over decades and decades. You can change, if you're watching on the Freedom News, on the Salem News Channel, that's Chip Roy. He's very smart. He's very able. He's very committed. He's very sincere. He's worried about the debt. I'm worried about the debt. But the immediate problem, the one you've got to solve before you can get to the next one, is the tax code. So we can solve the tax code with a permanent fix, which the one big beautiful bill does. Then we can move on with 4% growth to attack our spending problems. And you get 4% growth, everything becomes easier. Everything. But you got to get 4% growth. So that means I'm asking you to call 202-224-3121 and ask for your congressman. All right? Find out. Tell them where you live. You want to talk to your congressman. Urge them to vote for the one big, beautiful bill tonight. Get it done tonight. Then go home and enjoy the 4th of July, realizing that the most important thing, that the government not steal the money of hardworking Americans disproportionate to what it needs, has been done, and then come back and work on spending. Get creative. Outside of the box, you can find a lot of things to do. You can raise the retirement age, for example, 1 month a year for 60 years. Okay, in 12 years, in 2037, you can retire at 66. Got it? Very slow changes to the entitlement curve work. You can work on those. You can have a commission. You can have the commission come back and organize an up or down vote based upon that. But the key thing right now, today, what Donald Trump has put on Truth Social, on X, what Mike Johnson is saying, what the vice president is saying, what every responsible center-right and conservative is saying, is vote for the one big, beautiful bill. Put away the egos, put away the talking points, even put aside your deep-seated sincere concerns, and move the ball forward. This is what Republicans were elected to do. They have a chance of holding the House. If they pass this, they have a chance of unlocking economic growth. But if they blow it and explode it, all the king's horses and all the king's men won't put the one big beautiful bill back together again. Joined by Eli Lake, podcaster extraordinaire, host of the Breaking History podcast, columnist for the Free Press, national security maven, and all-around good guy. Eli, I'm going to come back and talk to you about the one big beautiful bill in a moment. But first, tell me about your special July 4th Breaking History, which is coming out tomorrow.
It is going to be an episode that looks at the Declaration of Independence, its intellectual origins, going back to the Old Testament, John Locke, but also its implications and how in 1776, a document crafted by committee, but largely the pen of Thomas Jefferson, was really dynamite to the world and in many ways dynamite to our own country, and how it's really a tribute to this, to, I believe, that is the spirit of our national identity. And we look at the Declaration through the years and how it has inspired, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, and even people like Ho Chi Minh, who was an enemy, or even the Black Panthers. But it is, I think, the closest thing we have. It's our national charter, but it is our identity as Americans. We are a nation founded on immutable truths and an idea about human nature. And that's an important thing to remember as our republic enters its 250th year.
Eli, Abraham Lincoln called the Declaration the apple of gold surrounded by the frame of silver, which is, of course, from Proverbs. I am curious, are you now, or have you ever been, a Straussian?
It's funny you mention that, because I have started to dive into Harry Jaffa and his interpretation in The House Divided, which is an excellent book. I am embarrassed to say that I'm new to that, to Jaffa. Let's just say I'm intrigued, and I have enough respect for the complexity of the thought that I would say that I'm kind of new to it, but I'm getting addicted.
Well, I tell people I'm not smart enough to be a Straussian. I took Harvey Mansfield as an undergraduate. Dr. Jaffa is my guest on Friday, though he's deceased. He was in my guest in studio 25 years ago talking about Crisis of a House Divided. Larry Arnn is with me. So my 4th of July special is always the same 2 hours. Those two men talking about the Declaration of Independence. I was just curious if you had read Crisis of a House Divided in your preparation for your podcast on the 4th of July. By the way, what are you going to call it?
We're working on a title right now. I like I'm going to steal it from Pauline Maier's great book, but I like American Scripture, how the Declaration of Independence changed the world. But Jaffa is certainly extremely influential. I think that is a great book, American Scripture. I don't know what you think of Gary Wills. I think his book on Jefferson and Independence is quite
I
good.
thought it was fine.
Yeah,
I thought it was fine. Gary Wills is one of those guys, if you throw all of his books down the stairs and just pick up every other one, you can either win the lotto or lose the lotto, because he writes a lot of trash and he writes a lot of great books.
Yeah,
and Nixon
I can see you probably weren't a fan of Nixon Agonistas, but
I liked it.
Book...
I thought it was great. I
okay,
thought it wasn't necessarily right. I did not care for his John Wayne book. I thought a John Wayne book was forced. And I've got an idea here. I'm gonna make myself write a full-length book on how John Wayne really is more than a movie star, but isn't more than a movie star. Tell me a little bit about the drafting committee. I'm always a little confused. Was Franklin in the room when they drafted the Declaration of Independence?
Well, I think it starts as like kind of an assignment to Jefferson. Jefferson was widely considered, as you know, the best writer of the founding fathers, and he was a great writer. But I look at the Declaration in some ways as that Jefferson's more of a curator of ideas, because what he's really doing is he's taking a lot of the political theory, he's borrowing from all kinds of sources. Locke is an obvious one, but another one is the English Bill of Rights from the Glorious Revolution is a huge influence. There are the state charters, which he helped craft for Virginia, but George Mason's Virginia Bill of Rights has very similar language. But I also want to say, and I was sort of surprised as I was rethinking this. Obviously, been thinking about the Declaration for a long time, like you have. But I don't think you get there. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I don't think you can get to that kind of really revolutionary idea that all men are created equal, endowed with inalienable rights by their creator without the book of Genesis. I think it starts
No, I
in
agree.
Genesis. It starts with
And I am fully
God created
aware
man in
that
his image.
Jefferson's a deist, but he is very
Right,
aware of the audience for whom he is writing, which is not deist. It's
right.
Judeo-Christian, and he is going to go with God and nature's God and the laws of nature and nature's God. And I believe it's obviously deist and it's a theist, and it's obviously Old Testament driven. And I think, by the way, that's why it resonates through history for as long as Western history's been recorded. I don't know if you've been to Monticello. Have you been down? The number
Uh,
of countries that have declarations of independence modeled on Jefferson's is remarkable. It's
Incredible.
extraordinary.
Oh yeah, and I get into that. And by the way, they're not all like they don't all live up to it. That's the other
Oh
interesting
God,
thing.
no.
But you can see the influence. I mean, if you look at the Israeli Declaration of Independence, for example, and there are clear references. I mean, what surprised me is that Vietnam's Declaration of Independence in 1945 is almost a direct lift from the Declaration. It starts off quoting the preamble. So you get it. You can't deny the influence of these ideas. And I also think that the other thing to remember, and this is Jaffa's big idea, is that it sets a standard for us as Americans, that for the standard by which we improve. It's the engine of our progress. That was certainly Lincoln's idea. He believed that he was dealing with this contradiction. But if you go to Jefferson's papers, as I have, and you really dive into them, what you find is that Jefferson was well aware of the contradiction of the status of enslaved black people in America. He knew that that was a problem. You can tell because he had one of the things that was taken out of the draft was he had a one in his list, in his bills of complaints against the king, was that he said the king had foisted on the colonies this barbaric slave trade, which is interesting considering that Jefferson himself owned slaves. So I think that the founders also understood this. I am in that sense with Jaffa, in that I think that Lincoln was kind of finishing that work, resolving that contradiction, and with it, and taking the Declaration and putting it at the center of the American experience. The other great, by the way, source, which I'm sure you know, is Calvin Coolidge's wonderful Fourth of July speech on the 150th anniversary of America, which
I
talks about the permanence and the enduring truth of the Declaration.
I think they're fabulous, and I don't know if you've ever listened to Richard Dreyfuss and David Strachan redo the Lincoln Douglas debates. Eli, they do it word
Oh,
for
I would
word.
love to. Well, I would
It's
love
a
that.
27-hour recreation, word for word. Dreyfus playing the little giant Douglas, and the other fellow, David Stratton, playing Lincoln, and it's just fabulous. Very quickly, let me ask you just about today. We got the
Yeah.
one big beautiful bill. I don't think they put Humpty Dumpty together again if they don't pass it. Do you think it'll pass tonight?
I all signs are pointing to yes at this point, but it's hard to tell. I'm not on the Hill, and that has not been a story I've been covering as closely as Iran and things like that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's a big turning point
Yeah.
for the Republican Party, and if they blow it, all bad things will come to them. But I am looking forward to my Breaking History edition tomorrow. Eli
But
Lake having wonderful.
what a winning streak for Trump, though. This is, I think you did you point this out, like one of the best months in American presidential history in a long while.
It's the greatest month.
He's had a hot,
It's the greatest
Yeah.
month of any president this century. I mean, we had rising to the occasion with George W. Bush after 9/11, but in terms of simply winning, you can't beat June 2025 for a president. Eli Lake, thank you. Follow him on X at Eli Lake. Read him in the Free Press, and do like and subscribe to the Breaking History podcast. Brent Gardner is the head of government affairs for Americans for Prosperity, where he is their chief government affairs officer. He joins me as he does most weeks. Brent, let me ask you, does the one big beautiful bill pass today?
I think so, Hugh. I'm pretty excited. I think we've got some good opportunity, but it's clear in how slow the process is moving that they're still working on a few things. But I think we probably see the bill by the end of the night.
Now, Brent, I've been doing this for 35 years in the broadcast business, all towards getting a few things done. America's defense is strong, peace through strength, but a stable, permanent tax code that people can rely on. That's what's on the table today. Defense, border, a tax code. How important is it nailing down permanent tax structure?
It's absolutely critical, Hugh. I mean, this is one of the things that we've heard families and businesses crying out for is the certainty that's needed for them to be able to reinvest in the economy, be able to make decisions for themselves, and to be able to continue to do the things that we know are a big part of the American dream. So the permanent nature of this will drive growth. It will give opportunity for us to try and come back from the terrible years of Biden, which is why it's so important that they're able to do this.
Now, Brent Gardner, I know that you are sympathetic as I am to some of the Freedom Caucus members' concerns about the deficit. I agree, by the way, with Fed Chair Jerome Powell yesterday. We can sustain this debt. We cannot sustain this path. So we do have to change the path that we're on. But we can do it in a two-step dance, right? There's another reconciliation bill. We can fix entitlements there or at least bend the curve. But we got to take the win that's right in front of us because I don't think we put this back together again if it falls apart. Do you?
No, you're absolutely right, Hugh. We have to take this opportunity and make it meaningful. And I think the bill that's been put together here was never going to be something that intended to solve our challenges in one swing. As you pointed out, we've got at least one, maybe two more reconciliation packages ahead of us. We've got a rescissions package coming up later this month. There's a lot of good opportunity to do this. What we don't want to do is miss the opportunity to take an incremental step forward. And this is more than an incremental step. This is a great first step, and no one is under the illusion that we're done after this. We've got work to do, and we're ready to do it.
Now, protectprosperity.com, protectprosperity.com, if you want to become part of this. What is AFP doing today? Because Americans for Prosperity has been in the fight to pass the one big, beautiful bill for as long as I've been doing this. What are you doing today? I mean, are you working the phones today, or is it out of your power?
Yeah, you bet, Hugh. Actually, I took a brief break from working down in our war room where we're still reaching out to members. We know there's folks that still have concerns. We're telling them we're going to be there for them if they take this vote. We're telling them that we're not walking away from the issues that, as you pointed out, we know they care about because we care about them as well. These are our friends and allies. We know they've got a tough decision here. We know they want more. We want it too. What we're hoping is that today they take this big step forward. We stand with them arm in arm, and we continue to do the work that we know we need to do to solve our long-term challenges with long-term solutions and get as much as we can every day.
Now, Brent, you're a sports guy, even though you're from Buffalo. You know a little bit about sports. You know about momentum. Momentum is a thing that once you get it going, it's great to keep. But once you break it, it's broken. Do you think the House GOP understands momentum? Because Trump's got it, and they can break it tonight with a bad vote.
Yeah, I know the president understands it. I think the members understand it. And it's a consistent message that we're delivering, which is we've got a great opportunity to get this bill to move, to be able to start to see the kind of progress that Americans were promised last November, and that we're so close to being able to see through to fruition. So we think most of them get it. For the ones that don't, we're reminding them how critically important this is. We've got folks in states today who are knocking on doors. We're reaching out to local offices. We're talking to members and we're talking to staff. So this is a all hands on deck effort right through the end, and we're going to run through the tape.
Now, protectprosperity.com, has it worked? I'm always curious about websites. Has it generated the interest that we need it to generate?
It has. Hugh, if you look back at some of the major inflection points in this bill, and we'll have a great opportunity to do that once it's all over. You know, the weekend that the top marginal rate came into question, AFP had a national day of action where more than 90,000 voters were contacted. If you look at that just a few weeks later, just this last week or 2 weeks ago now, we had 300,000 voters contacted on a Saturday. We've seen exactly what you were talking about. Momentum builds momentum. People are hungry for this bill. They're doing the work required to help their members connect to the importance of doing it. And so, yes, it has worked, and it will continue to work because the job's not done when the bill passes.
So just please remember, for Brent and I, protectprosperity.com. There are a few members who wish it was better, but it's not. It is what it is. There were a few that wish it spent more, and it doesn't. It's the way that it is. It's the bill. We got to get the one big, beautiful bill. Protectprosperity.com. They said it couldn't be done because of people like Brent and everyone at AFP. We're going to get it done. Brent, thank you. Time to check the markets, even though markets haven't closed. I think they're a pretty good indication of what the market thinks the Congress is going to do with the one big, beautiful bill. Market Update is brought to you every day by AmericanFederal.com. You can call Nick Rovich and his team at AmericanFederal.com if you want to buy or sell gold, buy or sell silver, buy or sell platinum, buy or sell collectibles. Mostly, though, people buy gold from Nick. They buy it in ounces, they buy it in bars, they buy it in quarter ounces, they buy it by the ton. He can handle any size transaction. He can buy any amount of gold that you want to sell as well. There's always a commission. It's always transparent. It's always above board. You know exactly what it's going to cost you. You just don't know the price until you lock it in because the price of gold flits around. Today it's at $3,367 an ounce. It's having a very good day. And crude oil is up. West Texas crude is up $1.77. Brent is up $1.20. And the markets are mixed. All right, so that's the Dow is barely down 0.05%. The S&P is up 0.37, and the Nasdaq is up 0.81%. That suggests to me mild optimism about the bill passing, but they don't really know. The gold price at 3,367 suggests to me, and again, I'm not a prophet, I'm not an expert. I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. I don't even know what it's going to be next hour. But I do notice trends, and it's just been marching north for the last 2 years. Throughout the inflationary years of the Bidenomics, it marched past 2,000, past 2,200, past 2,500, past 2,800. At 3,000, Nick Grovich thought, I think it's going to hang around 3,000. It didn't. It didn't. It hung up, got up to about 3,200. Then it shot up to 3,400. Now it's trading in the 3,300s. And I think we're going to see some churn there for a while. But remember this, gold has more than kept pace with inflation over the past 100 years. While it's obligatory to say past performance is no guarantee of future performance, I wanted to say 100 years, pretty good run. Gold is a good part of a diversified portfolio. I'm not a gold bug. I believe in it. I believe in dirt and gold and stocks and bonds and cash and having a little bit of everything because you're not smarter than the market. But gold is definitely part of that. And if you want to diversify and you want to do it smart, talk to Nick Grovich and his team at 1-800-221-7694. Now, once the one big beautiful bill passes, I'm thinking positively, Harley's going to post my monologue over at YouTube. I hope you'll send it to your congressman. I hope you send it everywhere about why we need this bill. But as soon as we're done, we got to move on to a second reconciliation that does a number of things, particularly curbing entitlements. But we also want, because we want to be fair to Americans who rely on individual health care plans, we want to preserve those tax credits. Now, I have a sponsor, Americans for a Balanced Budget. They explain their point of view on the tax credits at StopHealthCostHikes.com. StopHealthCostHikes.com. Believe it or not, Republicans are very, very united in keeping the cost of health insurance low. Here's pollster John McLaughlin.
The Americans for a Balanced Budget, we just did a survey because no one's addressing the healthcare marketplace that protects a lot of working class Americans who pay for their own insurance, may have two jobs, but their employers don't cover them with health insurance. So they have to go buy their own. After they get done with the big, beautiful bill, they've got to extend these tax credits so that working class people, when October hits and people get premium bills, we've got to make sure that they don't get sticker shock.
Now, because of that threat of sticker shock, I think Congress will move a second reconciliation. I do think they will protect the health care insurance credits. I think they will curb spending. I think they will bend the curve on entitlements, which is another reason to vote for the one big, beautiful bill tonight, members, if you're listening in your office. But do go visit StopHealthCostHikes.com, brought to you by Americans for a Balanced Budget, StopHealthCareHikes.com. Finally, I got to talk to you a little bit about something a lot happier. Best Hot Grill. And I got a lot of good sponsors. I got a lot of favorite sponsors. I have a most favorite sponsor, and it's Best Hot Grill. I'm sorry, Andrew and Todd. I'm sorry, Hillsdale. I love you all. But I love my grill the most, and I especially love it on the 4th of July. BestHotGrills.com. BestHotGrill.com. Not no S. Best Hot Grill, all single. BestHotGrill.com. It's the Solaire infrared grill. They go from 0 to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. They come in all shapes and sizes. You can buy it. You can try it before you buy it. You can believe me. You can believe Dwayne. You can believe my boys. Everybody in the family has a Best Hot Grill because when I go there for a steak, I want my steak done well. I don't want it overdone. I'm a medium guy, medium well guy, so I want a little pink in the middle. I know some of you are raw meat people like Twain. We don't care about you. Best Hot Grill will take care of you too. Whether you want your fish with all the juice in it. What are you looking at me for like that? You're just.
I'm not a rare guy. I'm a medium plus. Happy spot between medium and medium well.
That's the happy spot.
That's the
Yes.
happy spot. That's where
I'm glad you came around to my point of view. BestHotGrill.com. I'm glad you changed because I do not believe in sushi or
No.
what do they call raw hamburger when they say steak tartare? Steak
steak
ER. That's what they had to call it, steak ER, not
yes,
steak tartare.
and we don't want chicken sushi.
No, we don't want any of that stuff.
No.
But BestHotGrill.com gets hotter than.
It gets hotter than Democratic rhetoric opposing the big beautiful bill.
That's not very good, but I did catch on aware. BestHotGrill.com. We'll give Dwayne a pass on that. But not on my PhD weight loss. On 4th of July, coleslaw. Now, I hate coleslaw. People know I hate coleslaw. Does my PhD weightloss.com have a pro or a con coleslaw?
They're not a super big fan of it. It's not that the cabbage in it is bad. It's the soaking in all the other sauce that is bad.
Get rid of it then. What about hot dogs? Are they patriotic at myPhDweightloss.com?
Yes, they have no problem with hot dogs. You might try it without the bun, though.
864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
Dwayne lost 50 pounds over 3 months. He's kept it off for 2 years. Going on a cruise and blow it all. He's going to go live at the buffet. Drinks are free. Are drinks free on your boat?
Drinks are included in our plan, but
man.
But you know what? I'm more of a water guy anyway. And they don't have drinks are not.
They
gonna
got
be a problem for
cookies.
me. That's
They got
going to be
cookies everywhere.
that's going to be the problem.
MyPhDweightloss.com does not have go on a cruise on it. I'll tell you that. But that's what Dwayne's doing next week. In the meantime, 864
644
1900. We're standing by waiting for news on the one big beautiful bill, like the rest of the country. But I'm not going to forget to take my relief factor because I may go out and do a dance if the thing passes tonight. And that will probably pull things I haven't pulled already in the last 2 weeks. Been a bad 2 weeks for lifting and doing stupid things. But grandkids are around, and I always do that. Relief Factor's around as well. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel every day at this time, down go the 4 pills. Very easy to do. A little Trader Joe's water because I'm not doing my lukewarm coffee like I used to do in the morning. Relief Factor works. Call them at 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. And you will thank me. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega. Some of you are used to getting tennis elbow and you just play through it. Some of you are used to having a hammy pull and you just get used to it. Don't. Get rid of them. Stop them before they start. Take Relief Factor every day. Put it next to your coffee mug. Put it in your car if you're a commuter and your back hurts because it's a long and bad commute. Put it somewhere that you just don't forget it. I keep it in the studio. It's very easy for me to remember. But call them at 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. One other, nothing is happening. I've got my eye on X as I watch OBBB on X to see if it trends. I made the switch to consumer cellular. I would like you to consider it. 1-800-411-4454. Now, my own code is Hugh25. When you use Hugh25, when you call them at 1-800-411-4454, say Hugh25 and you'll get $25 off, $5 each of your first 5 invoices. Now, the most important thing to understand about consumer cellular is their target demo, the audience they most want to hear from. They're not against anyone under 50, but they really want to help people over 50 because they got the stats. They have the analytics, as we like to say in the sports world. They know that if you're over 50, you are more than likely buying more data than you need. You probably have an unlimited data plan, and you probably don't need an unlimited data plan. You probably only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. Now, if you're over 50 and you want unlimited data, you can have 2 lines, not 1, 2 lines for $60 a month, which is a heck of a deal. That's a heck of a deal. It's better than big cellular. But you might only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. I'm not sure what you need. I don't know what you need. I know you should get out your bill, find out what you're paying, number one, and then call them at 800-221-4454. 54 and use my code HUGH25 or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. consumercellular.com/Hugh. You can have savings without sacrificing quality. You can have the best quality in the country, and Consumer Cellular can save you money. Do not be indifferent to money. Do not be indifferent to $30 or $40 or $50 a month. Do not overuse data. Be smart. And Consumer Cellular, it's great. All their call centers are in the United States. You push one button, you're talking to a live person, usually within 20 seconds, never longer than 1 minute. It's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a miracle. As will be hour 2, keep praying for the One Big Beautiful Bill. We are waiting for the results on the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's probably hours away, but I'm joined at the top of this hour by John Podhoretz. He is editor of Commentary Magazine, host of the Monday through Friday Commentary Podcast, which I think is easily the most entertaining and informative podcast out there. It comes out a little bit late since I'm on the East Coast, but I love it anyway. John, I saved up this question for you because you actually know what you're talking about when it comes to presidents. You've worked in the White House. You've followed presidents very closely. Has anyone had a better month than Trump has just had in June in this century? And indeed, going back to the 1989 to 91 dissolution of the Soviet Union, because as your colleague and friend of this show, Matt Continetti, pointed out on the Free Press, the B-2 hitting Iran, the peace between Rwanda and the DRC, the NATO, the OBBB almost passed, the fact that he got trade deals with China, market hitting. He's had a hell of a month.
He's had a hell of a month. There have been presidents who have had comparable months, though the results of those months weren't so great. I mean, I think Obama in 2009, during the crisis of the financial meltdown, got 3 or 4 major bills passed in the space of 6 weeks that spent trillions of dollars. And Biden had a comparably good month in 2022. Again, I don't think in the long term, either of those months was good for the Obama presidency or for the Biden's presidency. Not that Biden's presidency could have survived his mental infirmity, but there are months that presidents have that where they get on a roll. Usually we measure that in terms of legislation passed. If the big beautiful bill passes today and he gets his signing ceremony on July 4th, that will cap this month of trade deals, the attack on Iran, the agreement by NATO to set a new 5% of GDP standard for its defense spending from all countries save Spain. So it's pretty stunning, and it's also pretty stunning when you consider how much he's learned since the first presidency, where he was inclined often to step on his own possible successes. Doing things and making decisions that actually hurt the possibility of him being a success. Saying to Paul Ryan, no, I don't like your plan to repeal Obamacare and then figure out the way in which to replace it. It all has to be done at once, which was a terrible political blunder. A couple of other blunders in 2017, owing, I think, largely to inexperience and a kind of arrogance born of inexperience. And now, of course, he's the most experienced person ever to be in a first term, if you consider this sort of like a first term. And so he is by far the most experienced person ever to be in such a position. And he's been through all the failures, and he seems to understand something about how to make successes out of things that in the first term he did not do so well with. And of course, the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, we forgot big
victories
wins.
At the
Lots
Supreme
of big
Court.
wins.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask you about the B-2 strike on Iran. I think it is the most successful use of American military power since the invasion of Panama, meaning that the mission was very Weinberger-esque, defined, definitive, and done. And I also think Iran's got to rethink what they do going forward, or they're going to get hammered even harder. How do you rate the use of the B-2s against Iran in terms of world historical significance, John?
Oh, I think it changes the 21st century for the better. Deterrence has been reestablished by the United States against irredentist and irrational and irresponsible regimes. Trump is somebody who we look at as a disruptor of the world order, but because he was willing to disrupt conventional wisdom on how to do these things, he has actually reestablished a form of world order that seemed to be degrading very, very quickly, in which regimes from not regimes, but like the Hutu, the Houthis, obviously Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran as a regime, and all of that, we're breaking every cardinal rule of international norms in their behavior. And he just said, we are willing to use the most potent force that we have to say enough, and don't do this anymore. And anybody who wants to try to do this again in the future, we have established a precedent for American intervention that is not the intervention that we saw at the beginning of the century, right? It's not, we're going in, we're taking over, we're rebuilding you, we're going to help you to rebuild. It is, we are going to knock the stuffing out of you, degrade whatever it is that you think you're going to do, and then you're going to have to pick up the pieces and see where you go from there.
Yeah, it's a repudiation. Powell had the doctrine, if you break it, you bought it. Yeah, Trump's doctrine is I can break it and I don't buy it. And I like that doctrine. Now I got to turn to Mr. Mamdani. All I know about Mr. Mamdani, I've learned from the Commentary podcast and his Wikipedia entry. In his Wikipedia entry, I learned he went to Bowdoin and majored in Africana studies, whatever they are. I think he's illiterate economically, but I also looked up the mayoralship of New York. The mayor of New York gets to appoint the commissioner of police and the chancellor of the public schools. So this guy can do a world of damage. Do New Yorkers understand that?
New York has a very, very strong mayoralty. It used to not have a strong mayoralty. In 1989, right before Rudy Giuliani became mayor, there was the city's system of government was altered. It had a system called the Board of Estimate that really governed the city, not the mayor. And the Board of Estimate was ruled unconstitutional, and a new city charter was written, and it actually gave very, very significant powers to the mayor. Not absolute powers, like not taxation powers, but yes, he does have control of many aspects of the city and the cityscape. And I don't know that he's economically illiterate. I think he is economically radical. I don't think it's illiterate to be a democratic socialist leaning toward communism. I think it is a form of radicalism that is born of anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism. He says he does not like capital. He literally said, I don't like capitalism. He said he doesn't think there should be billionaires, which means that he does not believe that success through innovation and all of that should be rewarded. And he believes in government ownership of fundamental institutions like grocery stores. And he wants to give free stuff away. Now, many mayors do. Like, he wants to make sure that you can ride on the buses for free in New York City. Rudy Giuliani, as a sop to Staten Island, which helped him get elected in 1993, made the Staten Island ferry free. Now, to be fair, Staten Island ferry cost a quarter then to ride the Staten Island ferry. So he said, we'll make it free. It's not free anymore. Buses aren't free. Buses were free during the pandemic. That's an $800 million hit on the buses. He can't do that, by the way. He doesn't have the power to do that. That's in the hands of something called the MTA. But what he wants to do is create an economically radical and a radical city government. And that is his purpose. And I think he's a serious person in the sense that he is consistent in his socialism across the board. And he is so far, though it's only been a week or so, he has so far made it clear he is not going to moderate his views. He's not going to etch-a-sketch himself in order to make himself more palatable in the general election. He is holding fast to what he said he believed and what he goes. And in that sense, I guess he's admirable because he's not going back on his word. And now the question is there a way to prevent him from becoming mayor? Because the opposition against him, such as it is split three ways. There's a Republican candidate, a guy named Curtis Sliwa, not a very serious candidate, ran the last time, got 300,000 votes. There is an independent candidacy in the sitting mayor who decided not to run for re-election in his party because of many things involving his corruption and his pardon by Trump. That's Eric Adams. And there is Andrew Cuomo, who was humiliated in the primary, the former governor, disgraced former governor who had to resign, but nonetheless has money and does have a line. Like there is a line on the independent ballot that he can run on. And if one or two of them don't get out of the race, there's no way for there to be a consolidated anti-Mamdani vote.
So, John,
And,
we got 1 minute. Here's my question. Are you going to leave New York if Mamdani wins?
Nah, I'm not going to leave New York. I'll tell you why. I lived through New York in the 60s. I grew up in New York in the 70s. It was a hellhole here, and it got better. It was a hellhole. It was a nightmare. It was a violent, plagued, drug-addled nightmare. It's not been so great here in the last 10 or 12 years, but this is New York, and it can survive this, creep, anti-Semite creep, and his policies won't work, so he will fail as mayor. I mean,
I know it's
literally,
just going to
the
be.
laws of
I lived there
economics
in
say he'll
1980.
not
I only lived there for 6 months. I said I'm never
That
coming
wasn't
back here.
that. It was already getting better then. It was getting better in
It was,
1980.
I just can't believe New Yorkers would do this to themselves.
Well,
God
they
bless
didn't.
Eric
They
Adams.
didn't. Democrats did it.
That's
Democrats
it. Democrats
did it to
do
themselves.
John
And the
Podhoretz,
problem is
go
the
listen to the
Republicans here
Commentary
are effective.
Podcast. Like and subscribe it. We're going to get them to 20,000 like and subscribes quickly because you will like it if you subscribe to it. One big beautiful bill hangs in the balance. We don't know where it is. Russ Vogt, the head of the Office of Management and Budget, was just caucusing with members of the Freedom Caucus, I believe. If the bill does not pass, we can blame my next guest, John Campbell, because he actually trained Russ Vogt. He's already responsible for the dysfunction in California. So if the one big beautiful bill fails, we're blaming you, Campbell. Tell us what it's like to get your arm twisted coming up to a bill like this.
Okay, I don't know if I mean, I'm the fault of everything. Why do I do this show? Anyway, okay, yes, I have seen not this exact movie, obviously, because this is the One Big Beautiful Bill movie, but I've seen plenty of these sorts of things from the perspective of both minority and the majority. Let me talk about the minority for a minute because it's the easiest. So no Democrat's going to vote for this bill. So they're over there sitting around, they're not involved in twisting any arms or whatever. I don't think there's any Democrats thinking of voting for it, so they have to twist their arm to vote against it. So what are they doing? What they'd love to do is kill the bill. But they can't kill the bill unless they get more Republicans to vote against it. So what they did, and we were very active doing this during the Obamacare vote back in 2009, I think that was, that you try and create conditions where it will make it difficult for a Republican in this case to vote for the bill. So you're a Democrat from New York, and you want to try and get some of your New York Republicans to not vote against it. So you go on TV there, you go on air there, you do a bunch of things there to say, this is in the bill and it'll be terrible for New York if this happens. And this person said this and this said that. If this person votes for this bill, all this terrible stuff is going to happen. You can blame them and make sure you throw them out of office next year. So that's what the Democrats are doing. They're trying to make a few Republicans nervous to vote for the bill. All right, now let's turn to the Republicans and the president and Russ Vogt and the speaker and everybody else. So they're sitting with wavering Republicans and they're hearing what their objections are. And their objections are probably relative to something that the Senate changed, right? Because there was enough votes for the bill when it went out of the House. So if everybody who voted for it when it went out of the House votes for it again, it passes. But there are some who are saying, hey, and we know that for some of the New York people, the SALT deduction, the form of the state and local income tax deduction, is very important to them. And they're saying the Senate changed it, and I don't like the way they changed it, and I'm not voting for it. So what do you do? To try and get those people to vote for it, there are obviously carrots and there are sticks. But most of the case now, I think it's going to be carrots in this case. I mean, the stick would be Donald Trump coming in, and you don't want, I think we've seen that if you're a Republican these days, you don't want Donald Trump against you in a primary. Doesn't mean you're sorry?
Yeah, I said absolutely not. You do not want him campaigning for your opponent in a primary.
So that's the stick. is that if you vote against this bill, that's going to happen. And that's a big stick, but that's a stick everybody knows. So what are the carrots that they can throw out? Well, the opposite, that Trump will come into your district and he'll campaign and do fundraisers, whatever, 4 or 5 times. He'll do whatever to help you get reelected, to overcome
None of that.
this thing that you've done. But there's more things. It'll be, all right, yeah, I know you care about salt and that's important. And I'm going to make something up here, but we know you also care about a park, a national park in your district. And we know you also care about how that thing is run and how it can happen. If you vote for this bill, we'll make sure that happens. The president will talk to the Secretary of Interior, and we're going to make sure that happens. Or we know you have another bill, and this bill is really important to you, and it's a bill having to do with healthcare. It's a bill having to do with the military, a bill having to do with whatever. And say, you vote for this thing, and I know there's things in it you don't like, but if you can suck it up and deal with those, we will get that bill out of the House floor. Because many times people say, hey, I want it to be law. Well, I can't guarantee the Senate. The House can never guarantee the Senate. The Senate can never guarantee the House. There's an old saying that the opposition is the other party, but the enemy is the other house. And that's often been the case. And so the speaker will say, hey, I can never promise you what's going to happen in the Senate, but I'll promise you we'll get that bill off the House, or I'll promise you we'll get a vote for it in the House, or I'll do this, that, and the other thing. So, and this is really important to you, and it's important to your district. And you know what? Maybe the salt isn't exactly the way you wanted it, and you'll take some heat for this, but you'll make up for it because we're going to have this bill happen and it'll be great, and your district's going to love it. And they'll forget all about that, by the way, because their taxes won't go up just generally, and it's going to be great. So these are the sorts of things, horse trading and so forth, that goes on to get those final votes with wavering members.
Okay, I have an idea and a question. My idea is a second reconciliation is technically possible, where 50 votes in the Senate are done. Could they turn to the Freedom Caucus and say, guys, you write the second reconciliation. We'll bring it to the floor. I can't guarantee we'll get the votes, but you write the second reconciliation. You bend the cost curve on entitlements. You do whatever you want. We'll let you manage that bill, and we'll get it out of Rules Committee to the floor. Do you think that would sway any members of the Freedom Caucus?
It certainly could. They may want some more. I mean, a lot of them will say, well, we want to know it's off the floor. And I say, well, I can't promise that any more than I can guarantee your vote, obviously, on anything. But they might say, we'll whip for it. We'll whip in favor of it. That doesn't mean for sure that we'll get all 218 votes, but we'll whip for it. We'll do various things. So yes, or even we're going to put this reconciliation together. We know what's really important to you is X on spending, whatever that X is. And we will absolutely guarantee you we'll get that in the bill. That'll be in the bill. There are going to be other things in the bill, but we'll make sure we get that in the bill, in the second reconciliation bill. So I think the fact that you can have another reconciliation bill, which the rules allow for, gives the opportunity for some carrots out there that could be very, very enticing. Because
all right, my question before we run out of time: if this fails, do you think they put it back together again? I don't, because of the peculiar circumstances surrounding a 50-50 vote in the Senate, the narrowest of margin. I just don't think you can put Humpty Dumpty together again. Do you?
I think there's one other shot here. I think the plan B is, let's just say the salt is the sticking point. That they say we can get this done if we change salt. The Senate has not left town, to my knowledge. So they could send it back to them. And so that they call Thune and say, hey, that you had, 35 changes, whatever, 30 changes. We're going to accept all but one, but we got to make this one change to get the vote. Can you check and make sure you can keep your 50 votes if we send it back to you with this one change? And they could make one change, send it back, have the Senate pass it. Now, the only thing is, and I was in the House, not in the Senate, so there's all those arcane rules. How long can Schumer delay the vote? But you're running You're running up on the 4th of July. And I've always told people in Congress, the real deadlines are not the end of the fiscal year or any of that. They're when your vacation starts and members have vacation plans with non-refundable deposits. I can't tell you how often I heard that. I really can't.
That's right now. We're up against it. John Campbell, if this does not pass, it's your fault. Just remember that, America. Follow John on X at JBT Campbell and blame him there at JBT Campbell because it is his fault. Ty Lassiter is the CEO of Key City Capital. Always good to see you, Ty. I got to make my disclosures. I'm an investor in Key City Capital. Key City Capital is a sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt Show. If you choose to invest in Key City Capital, do so by going to keycitycapital.com/Hugh and order up their prospectus. Read it. You've got to be an accredited investor. That means you've got to check the box that you're able to make investments of 6 figures or greater. And it's for people who want to diversify into real estate. Final must-do disclosure, you cannot invest in the fund that I invested in 3 years ago. They have new funds. Ty, I have a question for you. A research group that I follow and have followed since my land use day is called APM Research Lab. They came out with a study that the oldest states in the union are Vermont, Maine, and Florida. The youngest state in the union is Utah, followed by Texas. Do demographics matter to you where you buy your apartment complexes?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of things that go into that. Really, what we're looking for is a couple of things. I've got 4 key factors that I focus on. We don't have time to go into all of those, but I look for slow growth, and I look for boring. So I want a positive appreciating population market by 2 to 5% over the last 100 years on average. But then the other thing is we look for conservative, landlord-friendly states. At the end of the day, this is a business. I've got a charity that does charitable work on the side, but for a business, we've got to be able to move tenants out when they're not paying. And so we focus on landlord-friendly states and then cities within those landlord-friendly states that have positive appreciation. And then the big thing that we're looking for within those cities is a diversification of employer. So take a Memphis versus a Detroit.
Oh.
Detroit was heavy in the auto industry, whereas Memphis, similar type market, very similar demographics, but one industry does not run that market there. And so, you've got FedEx, you've got St. Jude's, you've got universities, you've got a large diversification of employers there, and that brings on a much stronger marketplace. You've got Kellogg's and things like that.
So Ty, when you pick up on do people come to you and pitch their projects? Do they know you're in the business and they come to you and say, we've got positive growth in our total population over 100 years? Or do they just randomly throw out projects at you?
We've got people that are randomly throwing projects at us, but I also have people that I've worked with for a long time, over a 20-year career of buying real estate, that know what our target is and know the markets that we're in. And so they're constantly bringing us deals that maybe an operator owns right now, and they can't keep the funding together to keep the project running when interest rates are out of the market right now, and it makes it very difficult to operate properties. They know that we have some liquidity to come in, and so they bring us deals that fit within our metrics. But yeah, we've always got people coming in that jump on the phone. Hey, I've got a deal. Come look at this deal, and it's in Jackson, Mississippi, where they've got a declining population or something like that. And so I typically toss those out, but.
All right. Now, one thing I want to make sure I get in, because you often mention it at the end of our segments together, which is if you've got some chips that you want to take off the table. I want to translate that. The markets are at all-time high. That doesn't mean they won't keep going higher, but it does mean it might be a time to diversify stock money, investments in the market, into investments in real estate. Would you explain to people why Key City Capital makes that easy to do, not difficult?
Absolutely. I've quit trying to predict the market right now because it's not making sense today, but that is what it is. Really, how it's easy is, you jump on a call with us and we diversify into real estate by doing the hard work, the tenants, toilets, and termites for you. No matter what the problems are on the properties, I'm an investor on the property, but I've got a lifelong career of dealing in real estate. So I focus on the hard work so that you can take advantage of what I call are the 4 keys to investments: cash flow, equity, appreciation in your investment, and tax advantages. We let you focus on those things while we focus on the hard work for you.
Ty, I'm sure you've seen Landman. I think Taylor Sheridan could build a series out of what you do. Taylor's toilets, tenants' toilets, and termites. I think they could actually, because nobody loves the glamour of the apartment building business more than you do, right?
Not at all. I mean, I was in a hearing all day yesterday with the city of Dallas dealing with a property there. I go to Memphis next week to deal with problems there, and they never stop. And I get them at all hours of the night. But that's what I've signed up to deal with, and that's the crown I get to wear, and I enjoy every
But
aspect of it, every minute of it.
the the key as an investor, I never have to do any of that, which is why if you want to invest with Ty, go to keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Remember, you got to be a qualified investor. They're looking for six-figure investments. It's fun to be in real estate. It's not fun to manage real estate. keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Ty Lassiter, thank you. Have a great 4th of July. Selena Zito is a columnist for the Washington Post, for the Washington Examiner, for the New York Post, for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Probably for my hometown newspaper. I don't know if she's in the Warren Tribune Chronicle, but she should be. Most importantly, she is the author of the forthcoming next week brand new book, Butler, The Untold Story of the Near Assassination of Donald Trump and the Fight for America's Heartland. Butler is available in bookstores next week. You can pre-order it today if you want it on your doorstep on Monday or Tuesday of next week, and I think it's going to blow through the first printing. So go get Butler. Selena, I am wondering, are you doing a traditional book tour?
You mean like going out and signing books and those kinds of things?
Yes.
No, I'm not. I mean, I am doing a couple book signings, one in Western PA, one in Savannah, Georgia, but I don't have anything like that planned as of right
I'm
now.
glad because they're always full of crazy, deranged, never Trumpers now. And I'm glad you don't have to put up with that. How about media? Are they interested in a first person account of someone who was literally steps away from the president and who saw him in the hospital afterwards? Is major legacy media interested in this story?
If you mean by major legacy media like CBS, NBC, and ABC, no, they're not. I'm not surprised. It doesn't shock me. But the cable networks are interested, and it's look. This is an important story because I was, like I always am, anybody that's a regular listener to this program, I was out in the field that day in the way that I'm always out in the field. And I mean, like out reporting and that was a moment in history. Every reporter's job is always covering a thread of history, right? It's a tiny little thread, but you're witnessing history. But what happened that day was unlike anything we had seen in this country for decades. And it was, almost cost President Trump his life. It did cost Corey Compatore his life.
I just played the tape on the Salem News Channel of that most dramatic moment where the president pops back up, and I'm sure the Secret Service are not happy with this, and shouts, "Fight, fight, fight." At that moment, Selena, in distance, how far are you from the president?
About 4 or 5 feet. I was right
Yeah.
there.
So
I,
did
yeah.
you think I'm going to get shot?
No. In fact, it never occurred to me that I was going to get shot. I just went into work mode, right? Like, okay, I'm here. This is happening. I have an obligation to the country. Not that I'm all that important, right? But I have an obligation as a chronicle of news and history to continue to work. It never occurred to me to get down. In fact, the only way I got down was and there's this iconic photo of me. You can see the campaign aide, Michelle Picard III. I will always forever love this young man. He took me down and he stayed on top of me and shielded me until everything was given an all clear.
Oh, I didn't know that. What's his name?
Michel Picard III, and I love him. I will love this young man. He's not even 30 years old yet. If you go onto my Twitter feed, you can see the photo. I put it up today of him. I mean, I had just met him that day, and he
Did
is
he tackle you?
me.
Did he
Pardon me?
Did he tackle you?
Oh, yeah, he totally tackled me because I wasn't moving. I wasn't getting down. I was standing there.
Well, good for Michelle. Now I want to know, did you talk to the Compatore family or have they decided not to talk to people?
Yes, I have talked to the Compatore family, and there'll be a story out next Friday in the Washington Post, a very emotional interview with both President Trump and Helen Compatore. And how
So,
our and myself, and how all three of our lives were intertwined that day, and that our lives were forever different.
I'm so glad to hear that because too often we talk about the assassination attempt on President Trump and we're grateful he wasn't shot, but Mr. Compatore was murdered. And do we know anything about the killer yet, Selena, to your satisfaction?
No, we don't. And part of it is just the comportment of this young man, Thomas Matthew Crooks. He, unlike most people of his generation, he did not have a footprint or an imprint on social media. He was very introverted, and he appeared, and you'll see the reporting in the book, but he appeared to be fairly normal, all the way up till about a year, less than a year, and until the shooting, and then there's just a complete degrading of his mental ability. He goes to the Clarion Sportsman Club. It's a gun target range, but actually kind of far from his house considering where he lived. There's a lot more closer to him. Anyways, that's where he went. He went often. He went on days that you wouldn't expect someone to go to a shooting range. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, which screams to me this is a person that is very isolated and very lonely.
Yeah, I will be fascinated to read about this because it does seem like so much has been forgotten and swallowed up in the events of 2025 because the president's on such a roll. But when that anniversary comes around, what is the anniversary of the attempted assassination of the president?
It's July 13th, so it's 2 Sundays from today.
So you're coming out a week before with the book Butler. Once again, America, I think Butler will sell out, so you're going to be inconvenienced as we wait for a second printing unless you pre-order it, which you can do at Amazon or barnesandnoble.com right now. Go get your Butler book, and Selena, we'll figure out a way to get her to sign book. Have you ever seen those book labels that you can sign and send to people, Selena? That's better.
Yeah, I have a stack of them.
That's what you need to do. I'm glad to hear it. Doing the work of an author, a successful author. Selena Zito, follow her on X at Zito Selena. Go look up Michelle's picture. I'm going to do that. And read her in the Washington Post, the Washington Examiner, the New York Post, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Forget Butler. Waiting like you are for news on the one big beautiful bill. We have nothing concrete, so I can't update you on anything, but we'll keep checking through this hour and next hour. Do want to remind you that andrewandtodd.com, great sponsors of the program, 888-888-1172. What do? They get you a loan to buy a house. And you may have to move even though the Fed won't. Eventually, the Fed is going to drop rates, probably in July, probably again in the fall. And here's the key. Don't wait for them. Refinance once they fall a full point. When you get your loan from andrewandtodd.com, you're getting it from Sierra Pacific Mortgage, which is a bank. When you get a bank loan, it's soup to nuts. They open up the file. They walk you through the file. They get all your information. They check your credit. They tell you how much you can afford. They help you ratify and gratify everything you need. If you've got dings on your credit that would make your loan more expensive than otherwise, they will help you fix it. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian are like saints to thousands of people. And they have done the loans for thousands and thousands of Hugh Hewitt Show listeners because they've been a sponsor for a very long time. So whether, you are a veteran and you don't want to put any money down, you're a first-time home buyer, you want to do an FHA, You're a senior citizen over the age of 62 and living in your primary residence. You want to get money out of the house vis-a-vis a reverse mortgage. AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. Don't wait for rates. Rates will come down. They'll refinance you. They'll open the file. They'll do it again and again and again for as long as rates fall. In the meantime, the market is now a buyer's market. Take advantage of that before it changes. AndrewandTodd.com. Let me also remind you about my friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org. When you go to alec.org/u, ALEC.org/u, you can sign up for the State of the States newsletter. Once a week, John Williams and Lisa and the whole gang over at ALEC send out a new developments in the state legislature. There's always something happen in the 99 chambers of the state legislatures across the United States. Always something interesting, usually something bad. Whatever else is going on, ALEC keeps an eye on it and they tell you about it. So you ought to sign up for the newsletter just to stay smart. It's free. It's absolutely free. If you do know a state legislator, though, tell them to join ALEC. Finally, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I'm showing you the Relief Factor bag. I took my Relief Factor in the first segment of the first hour for the very simple reason that I take it in the first hour every day so that I don't forget it. I like to maintain the levels of icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega that you need to keep moving, whether or not you start early in the morning at 5 in the morning and go until late at night, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock. Even if you're in a vote-a-rama and you're a senator and you're feeling the aches and pains of doing that thing all night long, Relief Factor is for you. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day. Or go over to their website at relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack, $19.95. Click on that, get the starter pack. They lose money on every first order, and you can do that at relieffactor.com. On chair now is a legend. He's one of America's great historians. You've read seen the books, the plays that are based on his books, and he's got a brand new book out, Mark Twain. I was surprised when I saw it. I inhaled it. I listened to it, Ron Chernow. I listened to it. And I don't know who the voice actor that played Twain, but it was a very good choice. I don't know if the narrator was the same.
His name was
Do you have
Jason
any-
Cub, and I had a hand in choosing him because when he reads the quotes from Mark Twain, there's this delicious twang in his voice. He really captured the personality. So I think it's a real treat to listen to the book.
It is a fabulous book to listen to, and it's a long, good, deep read. Let me give you my first impression and my first question. I didn't know much about Mark Twain other than Huck Finn, Life on the Mississippi, the big names, and I knew what his job. I knew he helped Grant out at the end of his life, but I didn't know much else. What an extraordinary amount of grief he carried through his life. Do you think many people know that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is a story on the one hand of great literary triumph, and on the other hand, of tremendous personal tragedy. And I think that this is one of the things that makes his life so interesting, that it's so contradictory. And I found that he very much, fits the stereotype of the funny man who's sad underneath. That we all have a stereotype of Mark Twain as this charming, irreverent character in the white suit with the cigar, and he's spouting witticisms, and he has a merry twinkle in his eye. And that was true as far as it went. He was the great platform artist of his day, as well as a great novelist. But under the surface, he had a very, very tormenting personal life.
The thing that struck me, I've sadly had a number of friends in my life who've lost a child. He didn't lose one child. He lost 3 of his 4 children before he died. He lost his wife before he died. But when he lost his son at a young age, it really did change him. Can you articulate how?
Yeah, that's right. This was the first child. His name was Langdon. His in-laws were the Langdons, and young Langdon died at 18 months. Mark Twain had taken his son out driving on a very chilly May morning. He felt that he had not sufficiently bundled the child, and the child then got sick and died. And Mark Twain really flagellated himself about this. He was consumed with guilt, although all of his relatives said that Langdon actually did not die as a result of the ride, but that he got diphtheria. But Mark Twain had a tendency to lash himself with guilt. And you're right, Hugh. I mean, one of the contradictions, one of the sad things about this story is that the man who made the world laugh more than anyone else, had so much private grief. By the time he dies, he's not only buried a son, he's buried two of his three daughters and his wife as well. So towards the very end of his life, he becomes rather bitter and pessimistic. And he says that anyone who's not a pessimist is a damn fool. And even goes so far as to say that there was never a life worth living.
But what a wild ride until he hit this terrible patch of tragedy. It's just Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disney. He is on the run from day one, and it's one adventure after another. But I want to focus in on something, another thing in the list of many things I did not know about Mark Twain. He served a glorious 2 weeks as a Confederate and spent the rest of his life covering it up. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. Yeah, for 2 weeks he was a member of a pro-Confederate militia. He did not cover himself with glory. In fact, he said he knew more about retreating than the man who invented retreating. And Missouri was really riven by both pro and anti-union factions. And Mark Twain himself was very, very conflicted about the war. Up until that point, he'd been a steamboat pilot. The Civil War breaks out. All commerce is shut down on the Mississippi. And then he was very, very lucky that his older brother, Orion, had just been appointed secretary of the Nevada Territory. Mark Twain always has a tendency to land in places that are kind of full of life and colorful characters. So he goes out to the Nevada Territory. It was actually the site of the Comstock Lode, the biggest silver mining boom in American history. Mark Twain tries his hand at mining, and he's flat broke. And he then gets an offer to become the city editor of the local newspaper, the Territorial Enterprise. He said afterwards that he was so broke that if he had been offered a job translating the Talmud from the original Hebrew, he would have had to have accepted it. And he goes to work on the Territorial Enterprise, and he really didn't have much of a journalistic background. So he said his first day on the job, he was absolutely terrified, and he had no idea how he was going to fill up his first column. Then he said, a desperado then killed a man in a saloon, and joy returned once more.
What I enjoy about him as an editor or as a columnist is that he gives as good as he gets, and he doesn't mind when he gets it back. He throws hammers at people, and they throw hammers back at him in a rather, it's not a world we know in media anymore. People get outraged and upset about everything, and he's living on the edge every day with his combatants, and they are happy to give it back to him, Ron Chernow. I'm glad you dug that up. That must have been hard to find.
No, it was interesting because people very often ask, why in Nevada, he adopted the pseudonym of Mark Twain. That came from his steamboat days back on the Mississippi. The leadsman would drop the anchor over the side to test the depth of the water. And if he shouted over his shoulder at the pilot, Mark Twain, it meant 2 fathoms or 12 feet deep. So he took that. It was just a wonderful, wonderful pen name. But one of the reasons that he took pen name in the first place was that in Nevada, there were these newspapers where the journalists were constantly trading insults with each other. They were sort of literary gladiators. And Twain was absolutely a master at insults and put-downs, I would say, unrivaled in American history. And so he enjoys this combat with the other journalists in town. And I think that the pen names they all used way of kind of protecting themselves, maybe from libel.
Now, what's very interesting, I got a lot of notes here and they're kind of random. His pilot days matter a lot to him, and I'd like you to expand on that. Also, the fact you can't go home again and relive your pilot days because you're a celebrity. So last week, if I had read Mark Twain after I read David Barry's memoir, I would have asked David if he can go back to his elementary and high school and be Dave Barry again, which obviously he can't. But Mark Twain tries to go back and become a pilot again. And it doesn't work except for one blessed evening when he's left alone, king of the world. Tell people what it meant to be a pilot as a young man, and then when he tried to recreate it.
Well, Mark Twain grew up in a town called Hannibal, Missouri. It's tucked up way up in the northeast corner of Missouri on the Mississippi River. It was a tiny town, and he said that the pilots on the river, they were really the royalty of those days. In fact, the pilots made salaries equivalent to the salary of the vice president of the United States. And Twain became pilot almost by accident. He had been reading a book by a man named William Herndon about his 4,000-mile trek through the Amazon Valley. And in the book, Herndon says that he noted that the Incas in the Andes all chewed on coca leaves, which made them silent and patient, and they could perform prodigious feats of labor. So anyway, he hops a boat on the Mississippi. He's going to go to New Orleans and book a boat to Para in Brazil, because he intends to dominate the worldwide coca trade and ascend into the ranks of the global rich. He said when he got to New Orleans, he found out that not only was there no boat to Para, but would not be any during that century. But luckily, on the boat down, he had befriended a young pilot named Horace Bixby, who offered to teach Twain to become a steamboat pilot for $500, considerable amount at that time. And Mark Twain had been, he was kind of a cut up as a kid. He was very mischievous, loved playing pranks on people, lackadaisical. He was a master not at studying, but playing hooky. And suddenly the Mississippi to become a pilot was extremely difficult because the river was so large and so mighty that it was constantly reshaping itself. So he had to, in order to become a pilot, he had to memorize every snag and bend and shore on the river. And he was tremendously proud of the fact that he got the pilot's license in 2 years. And he said afterwards that was the darling existence. There has never been anything comparable to it in my life since, which must have come as news to his wife and 3 daughters when they read that comment. But it was just enchanting. And I think also, for a future novelist, every type of personality was aboard those ships, traveling salesmen, circuses, minstrel shows, you name it. So he could not have a whole colorful menagerie of characters who would then show up in his books.
All right, I'll be right back with Ron Chernow. Don't go anywhere. The magnificent Mark Twain is available in bookstores now. I do recommend listening to it because it's really wonderfully acted by a voice actor playing Mark Twain when he orates, and it's just wonderful. Ron Chernow, America's historian. I'll be right back, and we'll check in on the One Big Beautiful Bill here on the July 2nd edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show. The House Freedom Caucus Chair, Andy Harris, an hour ago was caught in one of the hills, said in the Hill quarters, was asked by a reporter, had he heard what he needed to hear from the White House yet? Chairman Harris said, no, not yet, but the evening is still young. I think it's going to be a late night on the Hill. In the meantime, let's go back to my interview tape right before the program with Ron Chernow, whose brand new magisterial book, Mark Twain, is available everywhere. And then when he comes back, and it's got to be 40 years, and he tries his hand again, everything has changed. The river has physically changed. Towns aren't there anymore that were on the river's edge. They're now inland because the Mississippi. It's wild. It's a biography of the Mississippi in small, and it's a large biography of Mark Twain, but you do get the history of the river in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the power of the river was almost inconceivable. The towns that had, been on the water, suddenly he's startled to find that they're now several miles inland. It was that strong. And he realized that in order to qualify anew for a pilot's license, it would be like starting from scratch. 20 years later, this was an entirely new river. I also think, Hugh, that he liked this idea of kind of preserving intact all the memories of his childhood and his, day on the steamboat. I think that he didn't want later memories to intrude on that. And I think that when he went back to the river, by that point also, the railroads had come in. The railroads were taking a lot of the business away from the steamboat. So the steamboat business had become, a rather depressed business. So I think that he just wanted to keep in his memory those glory days intact. And he wrote a fantastic book called life on the Mississippi. And I think that when he was in training to become a pilot, it suddenly gave a structure and a discipline to his life. It was something that challenged him, and he had a fantastic memory, sometimes a memory that embellished things a little too much, but in general, he had a fantastic memory, and always looked back on his days on the river as the high point of his life.
Now, there are many characters, Ron Chernow, in this book that I could talk to you about forever. I want to talk to you about one that might be a little bit odd, Joe Twitchell. Because Joe Twitchell is one of those people who, I mean, he caught my attention early on. He's throughout the whole book, and he is a friend of the famous. And he's a good friend. Tell people about Joe Twitchell.
Yeah, well, first I should say, Mark Twain married an heiress named Livy Langdon. Twain was making a lot of money from book royalties and also from lecture fees. He marries this heiress, Livy Langdon, from Elmira, New York. So they're living in a mansion in Hartford. It still is there, 25 rooms, 11,500 square feet. They have a loyal team of 6 servants. But when Mark Twain meets Livy, Livy was very aristocratic. She was very proper, and she was very religious, which Mark Twain was not. And so at first he became very close friends with Joseph Twitchell because Twain was trying to convince Livy that he was going to, be a good, sound Christian who prayed every day and went to church on Sunday. And that was the start of the friendship. And Joe Twitchell, congregational minister, was actually a lot like Mark Twain. He was a colorful character. He was a great raconteur. He was a hearty man, and they had a fabulous relationship. And it was interesting, Hugh, that Mark Twain did not have a lot of friends. He had a million acquaintances. I mean, later in his life, he was the toastmaster at every banquet in Manhattan. But he let very few people into the privacy of his own emotions.
But toward the end of his life, and I thought it was an excellent observation, he needed a home. He always had to have a home around him. And as his family died off, I think it's the Hamiltons in Bermuda, I can't remember their name, he would seek refuge with people who would produce home. But Twitchell is always there. I mean, a friend indeed. It's always remarkable to me that there are people like this. Now, let me ask you about Livy and her influence on Twain. She is his opposite in many ways, and she dies before he does, and then he loses his daughter. Does she change him at all, Ron Chernow, or is she just
changes him? She changes him profoundly. She again, Mark Twain is from this, a backwater on the Mississippi, this small town. He said when he met Livy Langdon, he was a mighty rough, coarse, unpromising subject, and Livy was very prim and proper, and she really made him presentable in polite society. With her husband, Mark Twain could be very volatile and temperamental in his emotions, and she trained him in what we would today call anger management. He had a tendency when he got angered someone to sit down and write a very impetuous, angry letter, and she trained him when he wrote such a letter to stash it in the drawer and write another one when he cooled down a few days later. There were also a lot of letters in his papers where they had been to a dinner party the night before, and you could see Twain will write to someone who had been at the dinner party, the madam tells me I might have been a trifle sharp and brusque with you last night. I really didn't mean to offend you. His wit was so sharp, he often did not realize that he could be, quite so cutting. And in fact, they developed a system at dinner parties of color-coded cards. If Livy held up a red card, it meant to Twain, stop monopolizing the woman on your right. If he held up a blue card, it meant that you're going to sit there all night not talking to anybody. The 3 daughters called this process mother dusting off father, and she really enabled him to exist in this very kind of polite, fancy society that they inhabited. And so I think that she really helped to tame this very volatile personality.
Well,
I have to say, she had a lot of courage in terms of marrying Mark Twain, who swept into her life like a tornado.
Well, let's get to the central contradiction of Mark Twain's life. He is a Confederate who spends the rest of his days running away from being a Southerner. So I've never really connected the dots. I've always known he's Mr. Mississippi and Mr. Missouri and Hannibal, but I kind of knew he was a Yankee too, Connecticut Yankee, King Arthur's Court, Prince of the whole thing. But there's a fundamental disconnect between where he came from and where he ended up. And did he ever reconcile that in his mind? I mean, he became very pro-Native
an excellent
American
question.
rights.
You know, aside from Joe Twitchell, his other very close friend was the novelist and Atlantic Monthly editor William Dean Howells. And Howells
Yes.
said that Mark Twain was the most de-Southernized Southerner that he had ever met. So, you know, he moves to Hartford, Connecticut. It's a very kind of, aristocratic neighborhood that he is in. But it's interesting that he starts a publishing house. It's called Charles Webster and Company. And that was really how he became close with Ulysses S. Grant. But not only did he publish the memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant, but he published William Tecumseh Sherman and Phil Sheridan. What do you notice about that list?
Yeah, he wants everyone to think he was on the right side of the war, is what he wants people to think. But he also he gets in a fight with every publisher he ever has. I was making a list. That's not unknown to me. I think that is actually not uncommon for writers. The entire Ron Chernow interview goes on for a long time because it's a magnificent book. I'm posting it all over at YouTube. We'll try and get back to some of it tomorrow. I'll check in on the One Big Beautiful Bill after the break with Sarah Bedford of the Washington Examiner. I'm sure she got her ear to the ground. What are those 4 votes going to do? Are they going to pass it and begin the American Renaissance, or are they going to kill the bill and will the biggest tax hike in American history? We shall see. Sarah C. Bedford is the senior political writer and reporter at the Washington Examiner, and everybody knows what I'm going to ask you for your opinion on the sentencing of Sean Diddy Combs. What do you think? No, I'm joking, Sarah. I've never mentioned Sean Diddy Combs on my show before, nor would I start with you. What do you hear about the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, Hugh, I think there's confidence that Republicans are getting there. The momentum is on their side. They're holding the procedural vote open right now to get those last holdouts over the finish line. The White House is working the phones. Speaker Johnson has been holding meetings all day. I think there's a lot of optimism that they will get there, but you do have still that small group of conservative holdouts who don't like what the Senate did to the bill and who want senators to be called back to Washington to incorporate their demands into the bill. That's just not looking like it's going to happen at this point. So the pressure's on them to fold.
Yeah, I've been reading. I have enormous respect for Congressman Roy. He's really smart. He really believes it. But I read some comments of his in the cloakroom that he'd like to get the Senate back to change A and B. They're not coming back. And so the real question for everyone is, do they walk away from this? How big of a defeat would this be? Let me rephrase it. Do you think they can put Humpty Dumpty back together again if it fails tonight?
No, it would be a huge procedural blow. It would be a psychological blow. It would be a political blow. It would be an absolute disaster if this bill wasn't able to get over the finish line in the House, and if the process had to essentially start over again, trying to get members on board. This is exactly what Republicans did not want to have happen. They didn't want to have the bill ping-ponging back and forth, but I don't think that's likely at this point. It was described to me by someone today that this is a lot like musical chairs. There are going to be 3 seats available for 3 conservatives to vote no on this bill. There will not be a 4th seat because Republicans aren't going to allow this to fail. And so some of the negotiations right now are over who gets to be the Republicans that get to have the principled no on this bill. Nobody wants to be the 4th no that sinks the bill. Nobody wants that on their shoulders.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Does anyone really want to be part of that 3 with Tom Massey? I mean, I just broke my rule that I'm never going to mention him again on the program. But does anyone really want to be joined at the hip with Tom Massey, moron from Kentucky? They shouldn't put R from Kentucky. They should put M from Kentucky.
Well, yeah, I think that no Republican wants to be seen as being against what's going to end up being one of Trump's biggest signature accomplishments, at least from these first 2 years. It's possibly the only legislative accomplishment that he could see for his entire second term. So You are, but Andy Harris is one of the people who right now is a holdout. He's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Republican from Maryland. He voted present last time. He did not vote for the bill in its original form. And now these Republicans are arguing it's even worse when it came back from the Senate. So you could also see that option being one that Republican hardliners explore, is whether they get a present vote instead of a no or yes.
Now, I saw Andy Harris, who's chairman of the Freedom Caucus, make a statement that I'm not there yet, but the night is young. That's the kind of statement I expect from someone who's negotiating for something, and I don't really care what it is. Give it to them, right? They've got the leverage right now.
Right. And that's why the White House is getting so heavily involved right now. President Trump has been making calls, taking meetings today. He's the one who can promise, look, if your thing isn't addressed in this bill, maybe I can do something for you with an executive action or something down the line for you and your district if you get on board. Those really aren't promises that Johnson is in a position to make, but that's why Trump's involvement right now is so crucial.
So, Sarah, when do you expect to get to a final vote? Will it happen sometime tonight after midnight, or will it happen at a decent hour so people can have a dinner and either celebrate or commiserate?
I really hope it's at a godly hour sometime tonight. The vote is still open, whittling down. You're in the single digit number of holdouts at this point. And Johnson left the building briefly to go pick up his wife. He appears that he's back now. So I do think Republicans are going to get there sometime this evening. It frightened me a little. My heart dropped when I saw Andy Harris describe the night as young, because it's not, if you've been covering it all week.
Yeah, it's not. It can't be. Not after the votorama. Sarah C. Bedford, thank you so much. Do follow her on X at Sarah C. Bedford. I have a new column in the Washington Examiner today that simply begins, when did the B-2s return to Iran? So I would recommend that you head over to Washington Examiner and read that. I'll have a column in the morning that anticipates one big beautiful bill passing tonight and what might be done for the deficit hawks who are sincere. There's nothing you can do about Massey. He's a fraud. But there are some very sincere deficit hawks, like Chip Roy. And there are some things that can be done to get very serious about the deficit very, very soon. And the debt. That song, which may be jarring to you, is popular. It is by the albino superstars, about whom I have never heard a word until they read this book, Brad Thor's brand new best-selling thriller, Edge of Honor. Brad Thor's Edge of Honor in bookstores now, just in time for the 4th of July. In fact, Brad's going to join me for a full hour on the 4th of July to talk about Edge of Honor, because it's very much a 4th of July book. But I wanted to play a little, we're doing a little teaser interview to get you set up for that. Brad, welcome back. Good to see you.
Listen, I'm $1,000 richer now because I bet Guy Benson that you would never say the words albino superstars in your career, and I just won $1,000. So thank you. Glad to be here.
There you go. It's Guy Benson. He's probably not going to let you collect, but I not only that, I've learned a lot of new. We will play them on the 4th of July hour. But I wanted my listeners on Tuesday to be able to order the book tonight so it can be delivered tomorrow, so they can spend all of the 4th of July enjoying a 4th of July themed book. So tell people why Edge of Honor is perfect for the 4th of July.
Well, so I set this the story itself is set in the DC area, in DC, in the environs, in the lead up to Independence Day, where my hero, Scott Harvath, and I tell everybody my books are like the James Bond movies. Even if you've never seen a Bond movie before, you can go to the theater and see the latest one and you'll be all caught up. So my America's top spy, Scott Harvath, stumbles upon a conspiracy in DC where a shadowy cabal of insiders is trying to depose, to actually launch a coup against the youngest American president since JFK. And this is happening in the lead up in the 4th of July. So if you pick up the book now, you kind of get to read along in real time almost with the story itself.
There's a lot of backstory in here that will only be familiar to Beltway people, but I've always loved the 4th of July in Washington. I usually go down to the mall, but there are a few rooftops with excellent vantages of the fireworks. The best is on the south line of the White House, but it opens there. And I just love the fact, Brad, you finally set a novel in a city that I know something about. And there are a few things I don't know about. We'll talk about them on Friday the 4th. But I'm very juiced to actually know and understand the traffic patterns, the streets you're on. Are you getting a lot of that from people who've read this?
Yeah, I am. And it's really funny because I had a buddy of mine reach out to me and say that one of the patterns that the FBI agents do, he was part of John Ashcroft's protective security detail. And he said, we drove that exact same route. So for people who are DC people, they really love the fact that DC almost is like a character itself in the thriller.
Now, I do want to emphasize, if people order this today from Amazon, Edge of Honor, it will come tomorrow and you can read it on the 4th of July. And you'll really enjoy it because it's a 4th of July theme. And how was the pre-publication sale, Brad? You're always a #1 New York Times bestseller. Is this exceeding every expectation again?
It's been fantastic. And there's something about tying it to the 4th of July, the big patriotic cover we have with the American flag on there. In the storyline, the idea of this all taking place in the nation's capital, right at the edge, if you will, of the nation's birthday, seems to be sparking a lot of joy in people, patriotism, and I just seem to have lucked out and struck a really good chord with readers with this.
And we'll forgive you for having anything about Baltimore in there at all. Most of it is set in Virginia and the district, which I like. I don't like Maryland. I really don't like Baltimore at all, but there's only one Baltimore scene. Let me, before
somebody
we've
gets
done
shot.
the teaser.
I mean, that's
I know.
Baltimore, right? I mean, it's not like
everyone gets shot in Baltimore. Larry Hogan would not like that. But let me ask you this. Scott Harvath, according to your endnotes, where you give a shout out to Scott Schwimmer, who is your entertainment lawyer. You note that Scott Harvath is coming to Living Color. What's the news there, Brad?
So we have made a big deal in Hollywood. We finalized the deal. We are just waiting for the announcement to get made. But Harvath is going to be, the first season of Harvath is going to be an 8-episode season. It's going to be based on my very first novel. They are updating it to current times. And hopefully we will be shooting starting right after Christmas. So I'm super excited. And we've got the director of the John Wick movies. This is his first TV project. Howard Gordon, the force behind 24 and Homeland, is one of our executive producers. And then our lead writer and showrunner is Steve Lightfoot, who, among many other projects, was the writer that did The Punisher, that was on Netflix, 2 seasons of The Punisher. So we've got not only an A team, but an A+ team on this. Super excited.
You do, but Brad, there's been an oversight. My agent has not heard from the producers yet about my role. Now, Clint Howard had a role in Austin Powers, but if I see Guy Benson in the Harvath series, and I'm not playing my Clint Howard role, I'm going to be very upset with you.
Well, you know what? I have to thank you, because if you had not said, again, if you had not mentioned that Norwegian band, I wouldn't, even if I don't get the money from Guy Benson, I kind of owe you now. So yes, I'll make sure that we get you up right away in front of the casting team.
Well, I went to a John Andrazik show recently, and every single conservative except Guy Benson, who might have left the fold for that night, I don't know why, was gathered in one room. I just think you ought to populate your series with little cameos of people from the center-right world who are friends with yours, because they all read Edge of Honor and every other Scott Harvath book. And I wonder, this is my exit question for the teaser interview today, as you write these, do they get easier or harder, Brad?
They get harder. As you know, I'm the son of a United States Marine and a TWA flight attendant, and they told me, even if you push a broom as a career, you be the world's best broom pusher. So I keep raising the bar for myself every single year, putting my character into situations that he's never been in before. And this is my 24th thriller with Scott Harvath, 25th overall. So it's a lot of work, but that's what makes the work rewarding, is because it's challenging. If it was easy, I'd get bored and I wouldn't want to do it. And I love what I do.
And this one is going to keep everybody happy. There will be no buyer's remorse. So as soon as you finish listening to this, go over to your Amazon or your Barnes & Noble account. You can even run out to the local bookstore, order up Edge of Honor by Brad Thor. It'll be delivered tomorrow if you're Amazon Prime. You can enjoy it on the 4th of July, and boy, is it well timed for that, or for the long weekend that follows. Don't wait another day. And by the way, if you are in town this weekend promoting the book, my friend Glenn is a regular over at Off the Record in the basement of the Hay Adams, and he collects authors. So let me know, Brad, off the air, and I'll connect up you two. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back to close today's show, except over to Amazon, and come back on July 4th for the full interview with Brad Thor about Edge of Honor. Do not miss our 4th of July special with Brad Thor. I'm going to stick around and tape an entire program with him that we can play for you on July 4, along with Dr. Larry Arnn and the late Dr. Harry Jaffa, who came to the studio many years ago, and we taped a show about the July 4th, what the Declaration meant, and Dr. Arnn comes along and comments on that. It's a magnificent show. People love it. Every year in the place of two Hillsdale dialogues, we give you one great Hillsdale dialogue on the Declaration of Independence. I want to remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I took it in hour number 1. I'm reminding you hour 2 and 3 that if you took it every day, you'd feel better. And we are coming up to a long weekend, the weekend that a lot of people do a lot of strange things. Some people go water skiing for the first time. Some people run away from fireworks that are pointed in the wrong direction. Please be safe with your fireworks if they are legal where you are using them. And if they're not legal, be doubly safe because you got liability problems if anything goes wrong. But if you're running in a hurry and you hurt yourself, or you're on a jet ski and you hurt yourself, remember, Relief Factor will help you get over the aches and pains that come from doing things that you don't normally do. Relief Factor really does work. The only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. Take it every day. Took an hour number 1. You saw me on the Salem News Channel do that. And I remind you again, call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or head on over to their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day, and get your Relief Factor started. Let me close by this. I've posted a couple of times today about the One Big Beautiful Bill. I don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to get to a final vote, and I don't know who's going to put their ego in front of the best interests of the country, but momentum is a wonderful thing to have and a terrible thing to lose. And if there are 12 Republicans on the watch list, I'm not counting Massey, he's not really a Republican, they can only lose 2. So 10 of those Republicans have to say to themselves, there's a reason to belong to a political party. It's to be around for a tough vote that doesn't really match what I would like to be done. But then again, I'm one of 535 members of Congress who collectively represent the United States. This is the best bill that we got out of this process. This is the only bill that's going to pass this year. If it falls apart, they're not going to put it back together again. They're not, because all the demands will be greater, all the bars will be higher, all the barriers will be topped with glass and barbed wire, and you won't get over them. Mike Johnson's done a great job. John Thune's done a great job. President Trump's done the best job of all. They brought to the people to the point of winning on making the tax code permanent and pro-business, winning on getting the wall built and immigration controlled and detention beds built, winning on rebuilding our defense, winning on getting our energy out of the ground, winning for the future of America. Doesn't cut spending as much as I would like. NPR lives on, and that drives me nuts. But you must not make the perfect the enemy of the good. You got to take the win you can get them. Vote for the bill, Republicans, and get back to work after the long weekend. I'll be back tomorrow on July 4th Eve, on July 3rd, so do not miss that show.